Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Lori Gimelshteyn, Executive Director and co-founder of the Colorado Parent Advocacy Network, CPAN. CPAN has been leading the fight to restore a rigorous, non-political, safe, and fulfilling educational experience for all students. Well, Lori, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It's great to be here.
Well, Lori, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you become active in fighting for students and parents?
I am a speech language pathologist, and I've been working in education for over 2 decades in private practice. I specialize in working with people who have really complex communication needs. And so for the last 2 decades, I've been advocating on behalf of children and adults with these needs in the educational arena, on individualized education plans, 504 accommodation plans, and really focused on family. It's been a passion of mine since I was 17 years old to become a speech language pathologist. And I've been very blessed and fortunate to lead such a great career. And then in 2020, like many parents across the state of Colorado, across the nation, started to get concerned about what my then sixth grader and eighth grader were being exposed to. One of the most, I would say probably the very first alarming experience was when our daughter, who was 11 at the time, came home from school. They were going in cohorts. Remember how fun it was, masks and 6 feet of distance and all this stuff. And they were going to school twice a week, and then they were doing online learning the remainder of the week. And Jenny was sharing with us at dinner that her friend Stella was now going to be River. And River was going to use he, his, him pronouns and use the boys' room. And honestly, my very first thought was I must have missed the email on this, because this is a really heavy topic that I'd want to be able to talk with her about. I mean, this is something that is very rare. It doesn't happen often. And so I just simply said, wow, that's really progressive of River's parents to ask the school to do a workshop. And Jenny said, oh, no, Mommy, River goes home every day as a girl, because parents have no idea. And so that was the very first alarm bell. And then the second one came a couple weeks later when our son, who was in eighth grade English language arts honors class, and he asked me for some help on an assignment that he had already begun. And I went up to his room and sat down at his desk. And the assignment was, why is your favorite hobby racist? Why? And in the rubric to get full points, he had to say racist against people of color. And my first instinct was I was furious with this assignment. And I said, Chris, you will get an F on this assignment before you lie. And he said to me, you don't understand, Mom. I have to think one way at home and another way at school. And that's when my husband and I started talking with other neighbors. But again, remember, at 21, it was our country was in a massive uproar and divide, and it wasn't a very comfortable place to be in, to be asking questions, especially around race, because we had George Floyd had recently occurred. We had Black Lives Matter, defund the police, DEI efforts were flying all over the place, and everybody was talking in whispers. So when you would engage with somebody, even if you were, out walking the dog, they immediately go into a whisper like, yeah, I saw that too. And I don't really know what to do about it. I don't want to say anything about it. And so we just started doing like what you should do, reaching out to teachers, connecting with principals. And I quickly realized that all of that was just being ignored. I was simply being babysat. So then we thought, well, let's bring this to the Board of Education. I mean, this is the board that we, the people elected to represent us, and surely they will stop this nonsense. And again, coming to the quick realization that this is very, very deep. And after the last almost 3 years of being immersed in school board policy, curricular transparency, all of these things that are happening in our schools, I've come to see what is ultimately happening. And that is that our public education system is, for lack of a better term, an indoctrination arena. And there is a plan to ensure that our children are led more into an activist role with a value system and a belief system that's different than what we're raising our children. We're raising our children to have, strong moral character, value system, to treat others with respect, to take opportunity and do great things with it. And there are many great teachers in our schools. There really, truly are. And one of the things that I hear often is, well, why aren't these teachers leaving? Why aren't they stepping up? And the reason they're not is because their hands are tied. They can't afford to lose their job. They have children, they have mortgages. In the state of Colorado, teachers can't jump from one school district to the next without losing their pay scale. So they'll start at the bottom again. And so, CPAN, the Colorado Parent Advocacy Network, which your viewers, your listeners can check us out at coloradoparents.org, really grew because we recognized and understood that there is no accountability for the people in charge in our education system. Ultimately, they should be accountable to the people they serve, but there is no checks and balances. So that's why they can railroad us. And that's why they continue to ignore us. And that's why they continue to push these harmful agendas that are really causing our students to not be scholars. I mean, they're academics in the state of Colorado. More than half of the students across the state are not at grade level in reading, writing, or math. And that has been happening for almost a decade. That wasn't because of COVID learning losses. That's been documented by the Colorado Measures of Academic Success, which is a standardized state test to assure college readiness in our students. And, a lot of people might say, well, in my school district, we have the highest graduation rate ever. And that should cause people alarm and cause people to just stop and think, how are we pushing out so many graduates that are not meeting basic levels of proficiency in reading, writing, or math?
Wow. Well, Lori, there's a lot to unpack there. It's very interesting to see all the work that you've been doing. I'm very thankful that you've putting the work together to stand up for parents, for students across Colorado. But where do you think this came from? I mean, like you said, COVID was kind of a wake-up period for a lot of people. There's saw for the first time a glimpse into some of this public school indoctrination that they might not have been aware of. Because, I'm a product of Jefferson County Public Schools. I didn't have this when I was going to school so much, at least that I can remember. So where does this come from?
Well, you can really follow it back, 100 years ago. You're looking at John Dewey and kind of the founders of public education that were all Marxists. And the teachers union, the Colorado Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, the National Education Association, all of these teachers unions are really promoting and pushing this agenda into the schools. And these engines are money makers. They have so much money that they spend on ensuring that the agenda is continuing and cannot be removed. So when you see DEI uppercase, so diversity, equity, and inclusion, when you first hear those words, you're like, that's amazing. Everybody supports diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. When you hear, LGBTQIA plus, make sure, people have, are not treated poorly or bullied. Everybody can get behind that. But the problem is that the vocabulary does not match our dictionary. And that's what my friend Alvin Louis says. He says they're using our vocabulary, but not our dictionary, and they're weaponizing our kindness. And I think that is probably one of the most powerful things that you can really sit back and think about. When parents, when community stakeholders, when teachers, when students are coming forward with concerns about the obscene books in school libraries, for example. Okay, so when we share a concern about that and we go through the proper protocol, we reach out to Board of Ed, we ask for a review of a book, and then you'll immediately see that these leaders, these boards of ed directors, these district administrators, the teachers union immediately come out with this concept of banned books. Okay, so this is a really great example of using our vocabulary, but not our dictionary. So nowhere in the state of Colorado has the Colorado Parent Advocacy Network or any of our member groups that represent local school districts ever requested a ban on books. Banned books are illegal. You can't get them anywhere. What we're simply asking for is for books that contain obscene material as defined by Colorado state statute, by the statutes, have maturity ratings and require parental permission. But then we're targeted and we're said you're banning books and you are anti-LGBT. Okay. So the question is, like, people need to think beyond that title in the local paper. They need to say, all right, let's really think about this. What is anti-LGBT by protecting our children from pornography? Do our children who identify as LGBT need pornography, or should we be protecting them too? Because that is what they're saying. They're saying our children who are LGBT need obscene materials. And we don't agree with that. And ultimately, the law is being broken. When you look at state statute, the obscenity laws clearly state that these materials are not appropriate. But that doesn't mean we're banning books. We're just saying, let's make sure our school libraries and our school resources are not directing our children down into a road of becoming addicted to pornography or having unrealistic expectations of relationships because they're not being guided by the adult that is raising them. And I think as a society, I really just have this vision, a family being the foundation of our America, and getting back to that. And I want the schools to spend more time supporting that family structure instead of doing everything that they can to undermine the parent's role in their child's education.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think family is so important, and hopefully, people kind of wake up to this idea about what's happening in the schools and this, in so many ways, an anti-family agenda. The school system is kind of unique in its ability to do these kinds of things because, most parents, I don't think, want to question. They don't want to look too deeply into what the schools are doing because it's so convenient, right? Most
Oh, yeah.
parents, a lot of parents at least, see the public school system as a way to turn their kids over to somebody while they go to work. They don't want to think about the issues. They don't want to have to address the problems dealing with that. They're just thankful that, somebody's going to be watching their kids all day while they can go to work and not have to worry about that. And then the school systems, like you said, they have this weaponized kindness where people just have, positive feelings for maybe when they went to school, or just this high trust of our education system. Everybody loves education. People love teachers. So they have this implicit trust in the system to do what's best for the kids. And most teachers, I think, do want to do what's best for the kids, but it's interesting to see these special interests come in, or this top-down approach from the teachers unions, from these other people, these other actors coming in and pushing this agenda into the schools so strongly. It's almost shocking. Like you said, turning away from academic performance and focusing more on ideology seems to be a recipe for disaster in our schools. Um, so what are some of the other big misconceptions that parents have about Colorado public schools?
Well, I think you make such a good observation. And quite honestly, we should, as Americans, be able to have trust in the education system. We know there is no greater equalizer than education. Literacy is a critical component to success. And family support is a critical component to success. So why in the state of Colorado are our literacy rates so poor? And why in the state of Colorado are public schools working so hard to not work with families? I've seen we live in the Cherry Creek School District. And when we moved here intentionally for Cherry Creek, it's a destination district. It's touted as the district of excellence. My friend Jimmy Segenberger, who is an investigative journalist, he calls them the district of excuses. We've seen when we first started, when our children were in early elementary school, great involvement. I could be in the classroom anytime. It was a wonderful experience. I could volunteer. My husband could volunteer. We were always invited to come in. And then there was this change as we got into middle school. Middle school, the doors tightened up. And then as soon as COVID came in, all of the ability to be in that classroom setting was gone. And you can't observe teachers anymore. You're not asked to volunteer in these classrooms. And it's just very sad, and interestingly, legislation that was a bill was put forth last year. I think it was Senate Bill 080, but don't hold me to that. But one of the things that did was it sought to incentivize parental involvement in schools. And it would give up to $500 a year in tax credit, $25 an hour, I believe it was, for families if they were taking time off from work to go spend time in the school setting. And that is a real problem. Many people can't just take time off from work and miss their salary or their income. So that tax credit really served as an incentive to engage more parents. And that got killed immediately. Why would they want to kill that? And so you really have to start asking the question. And so something your viewers can read, a really important book is Standing Up to Goliath by Rebecca Friedrichs. It's a great introduction and full understanding of the teachers union's involvement and this Marxist agenda that is moving in to our country. I really would, our country's amazing. America is the land of opportunity. It is the land where equality was really first introduced. I mean, the concept of all men are created equal is just amazingly awesome. And what we're seeing in the schools is this push to hate America, to say that our Constitution is somehow racist. And I would argue that our Constitution is the greatest anti-slavery document ever known in the world, right? And so, who are these people comparing America to? Because I would argue America is the best. We still have work to do, and we are doing it to live up those founding ideals of our founding fathers. But gosh, we're so blessed to live in this great nation, and we need to get back to the pride in our country and the pride of what we're capable of doing as Americans. So, people say, well, what do I do? Do I go to these school board meetings? Do I speak? I do think that that's an important component of it. Having your voice heard. We all deserve to have our voice heard, but that's really not the solution, because there is no accountability. They're not going to stop what they're doing. So coming just in terms of getting involved in the public square, how can people do that? Get involved on a local board or commission in your town or your city. Start getting involved in these volunteer roles so that we can have an influence from this grassroots level.
Yeah, and it seems school board elections have become such a hotbed of activism over the last few years, especially in the post-COVID era. We saw some really strong school board candidates this year. A few succeeds, a lot of them fail. It seems like unions have so much money. They just have so many of these school districts locked down in terms of their political marketing, their political consultants, and their ability to control who's on the school board or not. Do you think the school board elections should still be a big focus for people interested in this issue?
Absolutely. And, we have uncovered a tremendous amount of information on the teachers union involvement in the school board elections. It really wasn't until 2019 and 2021 where school boards were even contested. Most of the time they just went uncontested, didn't even make it to the ballot, because you would think that somebody running for the Board of Education is someone that loves education, loves kids, wants to do great things. But that's not what was happening. What was happening is that activists were being brought into these school districts, just being brought in. And in this last election cycle, in 2021, we thought simply, all we have to do is flip these school boards. Well, we didn't realize and recognize the involvement of the teachers union back then. Just for example, in this last election cycle in 2023, we'll take a look at Cherry Creek School District. So there were two incumbents running. So they had already served a 4-year term. And then we had one district area where the incumbent was term limited, so there was a new person running. So two wonderful potential candidates, Scott Graves and Steve McKenna, decided to run against the two incumbents that were running. And their slate was called Inspiring Excellence, and they were really focused on all the right things, making sure things like the honor of valedictorian would be reinstated in Cherry Creek schools, because that the board had eliminated that honor because reportedly it inflicts harm on other students. Another thing was getting back to, literacy, making sure our students by grade 3 are reading. We know that that's the best outcome for all children. And safety and security, partnerships with families, school list and transparency. Great guys. Well, you have to wonder why it would cost so much money for a seat that 4 years of your life, you're talking 40, 60 hours a month of volunteer service, unpaid. In September of 2023, an independent expenditure committee was created called Inspiring Excellence. And we followed that to ground, and it was created by the Colorado Education Association, the teachers union. The first $45,000 that went into that independent expenditure committee was put in by the Cherry Creek Teachers Union. Then the next $112,000 was put in by an organization called Parents and Teachers United. Okay, we were able to follow that back, go to IRS documents. We realized this is all teachers union money. In the last 3 weeks of the election cycle in Cherry Creek, $140,000 in expenditures were spent to smear Scott and Steve. Why would they need to do that if they had the best interest of children and education in our country in mind? It should not cost that much money to win a school board seat.
Yeah, absolutely wild. Yeah, I've been tracking campaign finances for many years now, and it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable the amount of money that these national organizations have, these national teachers unions, and of course local teachers unions as well, and how much they pour in. I mean, they really have so much influence and so much power determining who serves in the state legislature. I mean, even pushing for ballot initiatives. We saw, Proposition HH this last year. We saw teachers unions just pouring money into that so they could raise property taxes, so they could get more of our tax money for their schools. So the campaign finance tells a lot of the story about how powerful these unions are and how they're working behind the scenes. But yeah, hopefully voters, parents, kind of start getting more involved in finding good candidates and supporting good candidates in upcoming elections. I mean, I think that's still going to be such a key place to fight in years to come.
Absolutely. Get involved. I would encourage your viewers to, at least in the interim, get on their school accountability committee. So every school in the state of Colorado has something called a district accountability committee, where parents serve on that committee. And they also, every individual school has a school accountability committee. You can have real influence on those committees. And I encourage people to volunteer for those opportunities and really start focusing on holding the district accountable. I mean, honestly, in any other industry, if you had results where 50% or 50% failure, those administrators, those executives would be fired in a minute. And that's not happening in our education system. So,
Well, there does need to be some accountability. As you talked about, this high quality education for students doesn't seem to be as important as some of this ideological indoctrination. We've seen this decline for years, and I'm really glad you brought up the fact that it's a pre-COVID decline as well. You talked, so tell us how, a lot of people blame COVID for these failing standards, but that's not right.
I mean, COVID definitely had a massive impact on learning loss. I mean, I even see it with my own daughter, who's now a freshman in high school. She was in that critical development of, learning how to get organized and how to start tasks and how to manage time. And none of that was instructed. So those key components I definitely see impacting students across the board. But the plummeting reading, writing, and math skills has been happening for over a decade. Okay, so there is no COVID excuse for that. COVID excuse, yes, for executive function loss, and also mental health. We know that children need that. They really thrive in social environments, most children. And we need to make sure that that's being taken care of. But quite honestly, what we have to do is get back to the basics. So that way our kids are reading, writing, doing math, and they're getting the supports necessary to be successful. We've also seen this big thing in the state of Colorado. Multiple school districts have now gone into a grading called equity and grading. I don't know if you're familiar with this. So equity and grading, basically what it is the leveling down of standards so that more and more students can say that they're in honors classes. And it's so alarming. When we transitioned our daughter out of public school into private school, and during her 8th grade year, she actually went to a charter school, which is a public school, but it's a charter and they have classical education in the school that we chose. But a lot of students that were coming into that, we all had to take student placement tests, all the kids. And some of the kids going into her 8th grade class, Brandon, they scored at the 2nd grade level across the board. And these are kids coming from being on honor roll, high honors in many cases in the public school. And then doing a simple student placement test, the truth is revealed. And that's something your viewers really need to key into, right? Because we're under like, oh, my kid's on honor roll, everything's fine. You really need to dig into that and really start asking your children questions about what they're learning, and dig down more into the whys. Why is it that you believe what you believe? I don't know if many of your viewers, across the state have kids at home, but one of the things that we saw in 21 and 22 and now was at the dinner table, lots of topics revolved around racism and transgender. These are topics that at age 11 and 13 really, they shouldn't be in the top 10 and certainly not in the top 3. And it's this constant thing. And so as parents, we need to start really digging into that and sharing with our children our perspectives and asking them why they believe what they believe, because they're being told to believe these things.
Yeah, no, it definitely starts with the parents and in understanding where their kids are at, really digging in and paying attention to what's going on inside the schools. Definitely an important part of parental responsibility for sure.
Mhm.
And beginning to understand what's going on, that's the first step to holding some of these people accountable, holding these schools, the districts, the school boards, the teachers accountable for what's going on. So regarding CPAN, what has CPAN done to hold schools accountable?
Well, the Colorado Parent Advocacy Network, we just celebrated our first birthday in November of 23. And in the last year, we've been really focused on helping parents and community stakeholders in school districts across the state to get organized. So we've helped mentor 40 grassroots organizations and 40 school districts. We have a goal of making sure that all 178 public school districts have an accountability group or an advocacy group, making sure the local community knows what's happening in their local schools. Really just fulfilling that role that's missing. So that's been a really phenomenal accomplishment. We also helped bring in many phenomenal candidates to run for school board. We had a unified approach for selecting, vetting, and supporting school board candidates during the 23 election. That was really fantastic. We brought a lot of great people across the state together, using some really fantastic resources that we already have in the state, like the Independence Institute. They have a wonderful education policy center, Pam Benigno, who's the director in education. She has phenomenal resources on school board roles and the science behind reading, information on charter and homeschooling for families. And so we also have been very focused on parent rights and helping parents have the tools that they need to advocate for their children. On our website at coloradoparents.org, we have an opt-out form. So, one of the things that we're seeing a big push into the schools, and again, this is the weaponizing our language, is social emotional learning, or SEL. This is a very heavy influence on your child's morals, values, their character development. And we want families to know that they have the right to opt out of any surveys, exercises, assignments that are going to ask their child to disclose any of that information, like their political beliefs, their religion, their sexuality. That should not be topics of conversation in a classroom environment. And unless, that's what the class is supposed to be about. But when it's embedded in English, Spanish, math, social studies, it's in every subject. And we have evidence of that. We have evidence of this curriculum being embedded into every subject. So this opt-out form at coloradoparents.org, simple form, you can just download it. You can adjust it to your needs. We modeled it after Courage is a Habit. That's a wonderful organization run by Alvin Louie. He has great resources. Courageisahabit.org is a great website for parents. Send that opt-out form in to your teacher, to your child's principal, CC the superintendent, and stay on top of it. One of the things that we recently saw, are you familiar with the Healthy Kids Colorado survey?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that recently just went viral in schools across the state. We've seen so many problems where school districts didn't give the proper 2-week notice to parents. Email is absolutely not an effective means of communication for opting out of a survey like that. And we just want parents to know that they can opt out. Parents may want their child to participate in that. Great, you can do that, but know what's happening and know what the questions are, so that you fully understand what your child is being offered to take. And in many schools, that survey was taken on students' personal devices. And that's a big problem, because this survey is supposed to be confidential. And I'm sure pretty much everybody knows that every, PC, phone has a MAC address, and that MAC address can be traceable. And that means it's not confidential. And then you have concerns, as people should. We have a state government that believes they know better than the parents. We see it in legislation. We see it in bills coming up in 2024. They are working very hard to undermine the role of the parent and to have full state takeover of raising our children. And so we need to get engaged in the public square. People can go to the Get Involved page on coloradoparents.org. Just sign up. We will help you with small calls to action, really easy things to do. Start, like, maybe we need someone to sign a petition. Maybe you want to volunteer to help organize people to speak at your school board meetings. Whatever it might be, we can help. Like, that's the big thing I want everybody to understand, is that the help is there for you. The coloradoparents.org is here to serve the state of Colorado, to ensure people have the resources they need and the support they need to be successful. So again, just get involved at coloradoparents.org.
Well, Lori, that is so exciting. I think one of the big issues out there in the liberty community, or people who believe in freedom or see a problem going on with these government schools, is what do you do about it, right? We've seen the problems. We see news articles almost every day, whether it's Cherry Creek or Jefferson County, or even up in Larimer County. Places all across the state of Colorado are having major issues with students either being abused, or teachers telling the students to lie to their parents,
Yes.
or destroying information, or the teachers unions figuring out ways to withhold information from parents. I mean, it's really scary stuff going out there, and giving people an opportunity to have a solution, to actually being able to do something about it, I think is very, very important. And knowing that that's what the Colorado Parent Advocacy Network is about, I think is very empowering to people. So definitely encourage them to sign up on your website, get involved. Is there do you take donations? Can people contribute to you that way?
We absolutely do. And it really is. We're an all volunteer group. I went on sabbatical in 2022, June of 22, to focus on Colorado Parent Advocacy Network. I volunteer about 15 hours a day, mostly 6 to 7 days a week, working on just ensuring accountability for these main pillar areas. We need academic excellence. We need access to school choice. We need schools to partner with parents, and we need school lesson transparency. We the parents have the right to know what our children are learning and to direct the upbringing and education of our children. So donations are always extremely helpful. Join us, be a friend of CPAN. It helps us with all of the great work we're doing, our evidence of harm campaign, our school safety summit. Back in September, we launched our school safety summit part 1, where we actually brought in 4 survivors of school shootings to share their personal testimony of what is happening. And then we also brought in experts with proven resources that can help school districts in rural communities, urban communities, suburban communities to be prepared and proactive instead of reactive. And so we're really looking to build that conversation. And that's another thing that I encourage your listeners, your viewers to do, is build the conversation and stop talking in labels. Stop saying left, right, Republican, conservative, Democrat. Speak from your principles, right? When you start speaking from your principles, you'll realize very quickly that you and your neighbors actually align. But all of us, we have, our vocabulary has been weaponized against us. And we need to help each other get out of that. And the way we do that is we speak in sentences, not in descriptors, right? You know, right-wing extremist, conservative, anti-LGBT. You know, we've, for example, I've been called all those things. And I find it hilarious because I'm none of those things. And the truth of the matter is, parents get to direct the upbringing and education of their child. The state does not get to do that. We are not a communist nation. And so we need to ensure that that freedom and that right, that sacred right to do that, is not undermined. And it is being undermined. But the good news is we're all becoming aware. We're all coming together. There's a lot of action we can do. And talk to your neighbor. Talk to your neighbor that is politically leans different from you. Sit down for coffee and just say, gosh, did you hear in the Cherry Creek School District that they eliminated the honor of valedictorian? That's just start from that place. And people will come together. You know, when people realize that banned books actually is not banned books, but just people asking for age appropriate material for our children to have access to in the school libraries, they'll say, well, that's not banned books. Exactly. It's not banned books. So age appropriate does not mean banned. And speak from a place of principled perspective, not in labels. And then the last challenge, well, I'll give you 2 last challenges. 1, definitely sign up at coloradoparents.org. It can be as simple as just getting an email update so you can help stay in the know about our website, coloradoparents.org. Donate if you have the ability to do that. Even $5 a month is so incredibly helpful. And we really want people to get engaged in local boards and commissions. You know, not even just around schools, but in your city and your town. You definitely have boards and commissions. I serve on the election commission in the city of Aurora. It's been a really phenomenal opportunity to serve in the public square and to really see our local government works, because I think we, the people, need to recognize and understand that an engaged citizenry is the foundation for freedom.
100%, Lori. Couldn't agree with you more. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face as a community, as a state, as a country, and really why things have gotten as bad as they have in so many respects is because there's been this disconnect between the people and the government. You know, whether it's the schools doing these things behind parents' back or local governments putting stuff on the ballot, spending taxpayer money to try and lobby the voters to raise their taxes, all these little sneaky things that have happened that people have been unaware of for so long, just kind of because it's not in the main media, it's not on the nightly news, so people just don't see it. So getting out there, really reconnecting with people in your community, understanding what's actually going on, and creating those conversations. You talked about having a groups, you know, for either like an accountability group or a committee or something where you can keep an eye on what's going on in your school, your district. Having that kind of idea, I think, is really important of finding the other people in your community. And hey, if you can't be a part of the school board, you can still be very active outside, being a watchdog, right? Kind of keeping
Yes.
that view over what's going on, well, what's happening in the school, and let's raise some alarm bells, raise some awareness, and get parents engaged if some bad things are happening. You
Mhm.
know, so I really appreciate all the work you've done. You definitely got your work cut out for you.
We're doing some great stuff, and I hope that everyone will get involved. We can connect you with your local group in your school district. And I want your viewers to know that even if you don't have children in the school, your taxpayer dollars are funding this. So you need to be involved too. And oftentimes that is so helpful for parents who are busy, raising families, to have grandparents, like with our organization, Grandparents for Kids, that's run by Linda White. Grandparents can get involved. There's so many great opportunities, so many groups to get involved with, and we'll direct you to that. So just go to coloradoparents.org and we'll help you.
Perfect. Well, one last question for you, Lori. What do you see on the horizon now? Now that we're in 2024 with the state legislature, obviously we have some people there with very strong views about what our kids should be doing, what our kids should be learning. So what do you see on the horizon here for the 2024 legislative session?
I'm very concerned about the bills that are being presented for the 24 legislative session that really do seek to undermine parental rights and responsibilities. And so we need everyone to be informed and engaged on what's happening under the Golden Dome. I got really involved in the 23 legislative session and became a lobbyist because we were fighting against a bill, House Bill 23-1003. I don't know if your viewers know this, but in the state of Colorado, legislation was passed in 2021 that allows the state to provide mental health treatment to our children at age 12, beginning at age 12, without our knowledge, without our consent or our involvement. And what 1003 sought to do was to take it a step further. And that would be to take over the mental health assessment of our children at age 12 without our knowledge, consent, or involvement. And what we're seeing is we're seeing these like leading questions and these assessments that are I call it like a push-pull, and it's very alarming, this government interference under the guise of mental health support. All of these bills came out of COVID, and we recognize and understand mental health is a crisis. But as a speech language pathologist, a clinical diagnostician, an interventionist that works with my colleagues in psychology very closely, not one of us would say, don't involve the family. An involved family always has the best outcome. And we recently exposed, I don't know if you saw this on social media, we have an evidence of harm campaign, but we exposed the Colorado crisis lines. I actually worked with a child crimes investigator, George Mama. He instructed us on how to do an investigation. And we were alarmed because we went into these elementary schools and we're seeing posters for students to text the word talk to 38255, Colorado Crisis Line. And there would be slogans on these posters that said things like, my parents are great, in all uppercase letters, and then in small letters at pointing out my faults. My good grades are never quite good enough. And these were being targeted to 5 to 10-year-olds, these posters. So I engaged in a conversation with a crisis specialist, and that crisis specialist required me to give them my full name, my date of birth, my gender identity, and my zip code. Children should not be giving out their identifying information to anyone without their parents' consent. And so they had all that contact information. They had the cell phone that I was calling from. And I shared that I thought that I was transgender, but I did not want my mom to find out. And the crisis specialist assured me of confidentiality, that she would not inform my parents, connected me to the Trevor Project, and told me that I could be anything that I wanted to be at age 9. I don't want an adult influencing my child's morals, values, beliefs, and character. That is my job, not the state's job. And we need to stay on top of this. And we have requested an investigation. CPAN has requested an investigation of all contract services with the iMatter program, because we learned alarming things about the staff that they hire, the training protocols, and the lack of accountability. These things seem to come from a place of compassion, and everybody can get behind ensuring that people have the supports they need for mental health. But when it's running rogue and there's no accountability, and you have people in power in positions of power to influence children, we need to have accountability.
Definitely, Lori. I really appreciate all the work you've been doing. Really appreciate CPAN, and I really look forward to talking to you in the future. You
Mm-hmm.
know, in terms of seeing what other opportunities there are out there to help parents, help families, to protect kids away from some of these predators. Because anytime there's a situation in which an adult in a trust position, or any adult really, telling a child, "Hey, keep this information away from your parents. This is just between you and I," and you have some young, naive kid. I mean, that's a system ripe for abuse. I mean, that's going to attract people who are abusers easily, and then also just create a situation in which people can have create tremendous harm on children with no recourse. So frightening stuff, but I
Absolutely.
really appreciate all the hard work you've been doing, your organization. Really look forward to see what you have coming into 2024, and let's keep in touch and talk again.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right, well, take care, Lori. Happy New Year, and we'll talk
Happy
to you
New
soon.
Year. Take care.